This is Survival Dispatch Remnant, and this is what it looks like when everything collapses. Then it gets worse, because the world doesn't end all at once. It breaks, piece by piece, system by system, until nothing holds. Power fails, communications go silent, supply chains choke and die, and the people waiting for someone to fix it realize no one is coming. 24 Hours Without a World, Day 0, Season 1, Episode 2. Intro. The thing at the top of the stairs did not come back that night. Mark Smith sat in the folding chair at the foot of the basement stairs with the shotgun across his knees and the pistol on the table beside him, and he watched the door at the top of the stairs for 4 hours without blinking more than he had to. The lantern was down low. The basement smelled like concrete and lantern oil, and the wet blanket smell of 5 people and a dog breathing in a sealed room. Sarah sat up with him for the first 2 hours, hazel eyes on the same door, saying nothing. Then sometime after midnight, she lay down on the cot next to Emily and fell asleep with her hand still on the grip of the little 9mm she had been holding. Casey did not sleep. He lay at the bottom of the stairs with his broad head up and his amber eyes on the door, and every once in a while he would shift his weight, and his ears would flicker, and Mark would feel a small cold thing crawl up the back of his neck, and then Casey would settle again, and nothing would happen, and the basement would go back to being quiet. The voice on the other side of the door did not come back. The breathing did not come back. The knocking did not come back. Nothing came back, and in a strange way the absence was worse than the presence had been, because at least when it had been there, Mark had known where it was. Now it could be anywhere. It could be walking down the street. It could be sitting on their back deck. It could be standing in the kitchen 3 feet above Mark's head, listening through the floor for sounds from below, and Mark would have no way to know. Around 4 in the morning, by the dim glow of his wristwatch, Jake came off the cot without being asked. He walked over to the folding chair and sat down on the concrete floor beside his father, with his back against the wall, and he said nothing for a long time, and then he said quietly, "Dad." "Yeah." "You've been awake for 7 hours." "I know. Let me take the chair." "Jake?" "Dad, let me take the chair. I know how to hold a shotgun. You taught me. If something comes down those stairs, I can put a slug in its chest from this distance without thinking about it. You sleep 2 hours. If anything changes, I wake you. That's the deal." Mark looked at his son in the dim lantern light. 17 years old. The face was still the face of the boy who had come down the hall an hour ago, eating cereal out of a bowl in his basketball shorts. And it was also, in the shadow cast by the lantern, the face of something else. Something older than 17. Something that had aged in the 24 hours since dawn. "Jake." "Yeah, Dad." "You wake me if anything changes. Anything. A sound, a shift in Casey, your mother waking up. You wake me." "Yeah. And you don't go up those stairs." "I don't go up those stairs." "Good." Mark handed him the shotgun. Jake took it. He took the chair. Mark stood up, stretched his back until something popped between his shoulder blades that he was going to regret in the morning, and lay down on the cot Jake had just vacated. The cot was still warm. He closed his eyes. He did not sleep. Or if he did, it was a kind of sleep that was not sleep. His body rested. His mind did not. He lay there with his eyes closed, and he thought, for the first extended stretch of time since the alarm had gone off on his phone at 6:30 the previous morning, about what was coming. Not the next hour, not the next day, the next year. He thought about the fact that his mother-in-law was dead, and that his wife had not cried about it yet, and was going to have to cry about it eventually, and that when she did, he was going to have to be the one to hold her up, and he had never in his life been the one who held Sarah up. He thought about the fact that Jake was supposed to start a job at a car dealership next summer and go to college the year after, and that neither of those things was ever going to happen now. He thought about the fact that Emily was 12 years old and had drawn a picture of her grandmother as an angel before anyone had told her what had happened. He thought about the gas gauge on his own truck, which was at 3/4, and about the gas gauge on Sarah's car, which was at 1/4, and about the fact that those were the only 2 tanks of fuel his family was ever going to have access to, probably, unless he figured out something else. He thought about the voice on the other side of the door. He thought about the fact that the voice had known Casey was there. The voice had said, "I can hear your dog," which meant the voice had known through a basement door, through plastic, through a stairwell, that there was a 100-pound pit bull in the basement, which meant the voice had listened long enough and carefully enough to work that out. And if the voice had done that, the voice had also worked out by listening how many people were in the basement, whether any of them were children, whether there were men, which meant Mark understood as he lay on the cot staring up at the dark insulation above his head that at some point later today or tomorrow or the day after, somebody was going to have to go up those stairs and figure out what was waiting for them, and that somebody was going to be him. He must have slept at some point, because when he opened his eyes again, the wristwatch said 6:18, which meant it was morning. And when he sat up, he was stiff in every muscle he had, and the basement was dim gray through the seams around the covered window, and Sarah was already awake, and Jake was still in the chair with the shotgun across his knees, and the basement door at the top of the stairs was closed and quiet. The morning of day 1 had come. Sarah was at the folding table. She had the hand crank radio in front of her. She was cranking it. She did not look up when Mark sat up. "Morning," she said. "Morning. We're going upstairs in about an hour." "Sarah?" "I said in about an hour, Mark. We are going upstairs because we have to go upstairs, because we cannot live in this basement for the rest of our lives. We are going up in pairs. We are going up slowly. We are going up armed. And we are going to find out what our own house looks like in the daylight." "Okay. And then we are going to look out the windows, and we are going to find out what our own street looks like in the daylight." "Okay." She stopped cranking the radio. She looked up at him. "Mark, I need you to be ready for what we're going to see out those windows." "I know." "I don't think you do, but I need you to try." Casey at the bottom of the stairs lifted his head. His tail moved once, softly. Whatever had been up there was no longer up there. Segment 1. They did not go upstairs in an hour. They went upstairs in 3. Sarah was in no particular hurry, and she made the hurry Mark wanted to feel stand in a line behind the sequence she had worked out for herself, which was eat, water, check the radio, check the basement window one more time for movement on the street, stretch the backs that had slept on cots, agree out loud on a plan, and then go. They ate another cracker with peanut butter. They each had a cup of water out of the 5-gallon jug. Emily, sitting on her cot with Casey pressed against her ankle, ate her cracker slowly, and then handed Casey the last corner of it. And Casey took it from her fingers with the delicacy of a dog who had been surrendered food by that particular hand 1,000 times, and swallowed it without chewing. "Yeah, Mom, we're going to go upstairs now." "Okay. You're going to stay down here with Casey for about 20 minutes while Dad and I walk through the house. Jake's going to stay down here too. You are not going to come up those stairs until I call for you. Do you understand?" "Yeah." "I understand, Mom. Good girl." Sarah turned to Jake. "Jake?" "Yeah. If we are not back down here in 30 minutes, or if you hear anything that sounds wrong, you do not come up. You take your sister and the dog, and you get into the back of the basement, behind the furnace, against the concrete wall, and you stay there until I call for you, or until your father calls for you. No other voice. Do you hear me?" "I hear you, Mom." "No other voice, Jake. I don't care what it sounds like." "I hear you." "Good." Mark took the pistol off the table. He checked the chamber. There was a round in the chamber. He put the pistol in his waistband at the small of his back. He picked up the shotgun. He racked a shell. Sarah took a second pistol out of the zippered bag at the end of the table that he had not known she had. A little revolver, 5-shot, snub nose. And he did not ask her where she had gotten it. They went up the stairs together. At the top of the stairs, Mark stopped and listened through the door for a full 30 seconds. He heard nothing. The plastic over the door was still taped. Sarah cut the tape along the top edge and along the two side edges with her pocket knife. She left the bottom edge taped. She peeled the plastic back from the door in one slow motion, like lifting a bandage, and set it aside. Mark turned the doorknob and pushed the door open an inch. The hallway on the other side of the basement door was dim and still. The laundry room to the right of the door was dim and still. The light that came through the small laundry room window was gray, the color of an overcast morning, not the color of a normal morning. Mark pushed the door open the rest of the way and stepped through, shotgun up. The house smelled wrong. Not badly wrong, not yet, just wrong. A house with its power off for 24 hours smells different from a house that is being lived in. The refrigerator had stopped pulling air across its coils. The HVAC had stopped circulating. The air had gone still, and the still air had collected the smells of the house, cooking from yesterday morning, the faint sweetness of fruit on the counter, the dog, a baseline that had never been noticeable while the HVAC was running, and was noticeable now. Mark cleared the laundry room with his eyes. He cleared the hallway with his eyes. He moved down the hallway slowly, with the shotgun up, and Sarah moved behind him with the revolver down at her thigh, and they cleared the kitchen the way Mark had seen people clear rooms in movies, which was probably the wrong way, and probably not the wrong way enough to matter. The kitchen was exactly as they had left it. The coffee pot was where Sarah had left it. The cereal bowl Jake had been eating out of was on the table, the milk gone off at room temperature in the bottom of it. Emily's sketch pad was still on the table where she had left it when Sarah told her to go get her shoes. The television in the living room was dark and silent. Mark crossed the kitchen to the back window over the sink. He looked out. The backyard was normal. The grass was still green. The oak at the back of the yard was dropping its October leaves. The fence line was intact. There was no smoke in the sky over the back of the yard. The prevailing wind was still out of the west, and he could feel it, even through the window glass, because the leaves on the oak were moving steadily, all in one direction, the way leaves move when the weather is doing something it is committed to. He turned to the front of the house. Sarah was already there. She was at the window by the front door. She had the curtain pulled back half an inch with one knuckle. She was not moving. "Sarah, come here." He came, he stood behind her and looked over her shoulder at his own street. Jeffers Drive in daylight was not the same street it had been on a Monday afternoon. The car that Jake had reported was still in the middle of the road. The driver's door was still open. The asphalt around the car was scattered with things that had come out of the car when the car stopped. A reusable shopping bag, a paper coffee cup on its side, a child's car seat lying on its back in the shoulder. There was no person with the car. The car was a silver Honda. He did not know whose it was. Past the car, farther down the street, where the road bent toward the Moon's house, there was a second car. He had not noticed a second car in the dark. This one was in the Moon's driveway. Grace Moon's minivan. The rear gate of the minivan was open. There were things on the ground behind the minivan. A suitcase on its side, 2 plastic grocery bags, a coat. They were scattered in an arc on the driveway as if somebody had dropped them running. Mark's stomach did a slow thing. "Sarah, I see it. That's Grace's van." "I know." "Somebody was loading that van to leave." "I know." "Sarah, the tailgate." "Mark, I know." They stood there a moment looking out. Then Sarah said very quietly, "Mark, the Moon's front door." He looked. The Moon's front door at the top of the 3-step porch at the end of the driveway where the minivan was sitting with its open tailgate was standing open. Not cracked, open. Open 90 degrees. Like somebody had walked out of it and not pulled it shut behind them. "Sarah, I see it. The door to the house has been open all night." "I see it, Mark." Casey's quiet snuffle came from the top of the basement stairs. He had come up to find them. Sarah turned and gave him a small hand gesture, and the dog sat quietly in the hall and waited. Mark set the shotgun down on the kitchen counter. He turned and leaned against the counter with his hands flat on the marble, and he closed his eyes for a second. "Sarah?" "Yeah. That's David and Grace." "Maybe, Mark. Maybe it's just the door." "Sarah, the tailgate is open, and there's a suitcase in the driveway, and the house is open, and nobody is answering anything." "Mark, look at me." He looked at her. "We are not going over there right now. Not you, not me,
not Jake. We are going to get information before we go anywhere. We are going to sit at this window and we are going to watch for 10 minutes. If we see movement, we will know something we did not know. If we do not see movement, we will know something else. We are going to use our eyes before we use our feet. Do you hear me? Yeah. Good.
Segment 2. They watched for 10 minutes. Sarah moved a kitchen chair quietly into the foyer and set it back from the window by about 2 feet so that her face was not in the glass, and she sat in it sideways with the revolver in her lap and her eyes on the street. Mark stood behind her. Shotgun leaned against the wall within reach, and he did the watching with her. Nothing moved on the Moon's driveway.
Nothing moved in the open front door of the Moon's house. Nothing moved around the silver Honda in the middle of Jeffers Drive.
In the 10 minutes they watched, exactly one thing moved on the whole street, and it was a squirrel which ran down the oak in the Lindgren's yard and across the grass and up the Dunbar's mailbox post and disappeared into the gutter of the Dunbar's front porch. That was it. No human beings, no sheriff's cruiser, no neighbor checking on a neighbor, no mail carrier, no kid on a bike, no jogger. On a normal Tuesday morning on Jeffers Drive in October, Mark would have counted 6 or 7 people in 10 minutes. Mr. Henderson walking his basset hound, the woman 4 houses down on her way to a spin class, the UPS truck that made its first run on the street by 7:30, a dad backing a Suburban out of a garage to take a kid to school. Nothing.
Not one human being.
Sarah. Yeah.
Something happened to the street last night.
Yeah. Something we slept through.
Yeah.
While that voice was at our door, something was happening everywhere else on this street.
I know, Mark.
They watched another minute.
Sarah, I want to check on Mr. Henderson. I promised Jake. Mark.
Just the front porch, not the car on Jeffers. I want to walk one door over, and I want to look at Mr. Henderson's front porch, and I want to come back. Sarah was quiet. Sarah, one door over, front porch, look and come back. You do not go in. You do not open the door. You knock and you wait 30 seconds and you come back. And if I hear him, then you come back anyway and we decide together. You do not open a door today without me next to you. Are we clear?
We're clear.
Good. Mask up. N95 out of the tub. There's a box of them.
Put on the mask, Mark. He put on the mask.
She put one on too. She took a second mask and a pair of nitrile gloves, and she put them in the pocket of the jacket she was wearing, the way a nurse packs for a patient who is not in front of her yet, out of habit. He opened the front door. The air outside the house was a thing he felt in his lungs before he felt it on his skin. It was cold, and it was dry, and it smelled like something he had never smelled before in Cherokee County, Georgia. It was not smoke exactly. It was a thinner smell, a chemical smell with an edge on it, something burning that was not wood and not grass. Mark paused one step outside his own front door, and he took one breath of that air, and he closed his eyes for a second, and he thought simply, in a way he did not bother to examine, that this was probably the first breath of Alabama he had ever taken. He walked through his own yard, along the edge of the grass to the property line. He stepped over the low hedge. He walked up Mr. Henderson's driveway. Mr. Henderson's front porch light was off, of course. Mr. Henderson's front door was closed. Mr. Henderson's newspaper, wrapped in its plastic bag, was still on the porch where the delivery man had thrown it the previous morning. The driveway was empty. The basset hound was not in the front window, which was a thing the basset hound always did in the mornings. Mark knocked on the door. He waited. Nothing. He knocked again, harder. He waited. Nothing. He stood there on Mr. Henderson's front porch a long time. He listened through the door. He did not hear a television. He did not hear water running. He did not hear the basset hound scrabbling at the door, which the basset hound did at any knock, always, without exception. He did not hear voices. He did hear faintly from somewhere inside the house what he thought for a second was a human sound, and which he realized after a second more was not a human sound. It was the basset hound. It was whining. It was whining the long, soft, continuous whine of a dog that had been in one place for too long and needed something. Mark stood on the porch with his hand on the doorknob. He did not turn the knob.
He took a breath through the mask and he said, loud enough to be heard through the door, "Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Henderson, it's Mark Smith from next door. Is anybody in there?" He waited. The whine of the basset hound continued. Nothing else. "Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Henderson, I'm going to come back later. I'm going to check on you." He took his hand off the knob. He walked back to his own house. At the front door, Sarah let him in. He peeled the mask off and put it in a Ziploc bag Sarah was holding open for him, and she closed the bag and put it on a shelf in the foyer closet, and she closed the closet and she locked the front door. "Mark, he's not in there." "The dog?" "The dog is in there, alone, for a long time. It's not good, Sarah." "I know. Sarah, Mark, we are not bringing a dog into this house today. We are not bringing an animal from a house that has been sealed up for who knows how long into a house with our dog and our children. We are going to think about Mr. Henderson's dog tomorrow or the day after. Today we are going to think about our family and about the moons and about this street. Sarah, that dog has been whining. I know what that dog has been doing, Mark. I know what it means. I'm not going to pretend I don't, but we are not going to open that door today." "Okay, come here." He came. She put her hand flat on his chest, over his heart, and she kept it there for a second. "Today is going to be full of Mr. Henderson's dog." "Yeah." "We are going to have to walk past a lot of Mr. Henderson's dogs for a while." "Yeah." "I know." "Yeah." They went to the basement. Sarah called down the stairs. "Jake, Em, come up. We're good upstairs. Bring Casey." They came up. Segment 3. Sarah had them around the kitchen table in 10 minutes with a pad of paper and a pen. The kitchen was bright enough to see by with the blinds half open, which was the brightest Sarah was willing to let the kitchen be from the street, and she had put a piece of painter's tape across the kitchen window at eye level as a sight line for herself, which she would duck under when she wanted to look out, and which she would not walk past when she did not. The pad of paper had 5 numbered lines on it, and Sarah wrote at the top of the pad, in block letters, Day 1, Priorities. She underlined it twice. She read the lines aloud. Water, food, light, security, information, in that order, all day. Before we do anything else, we do those 5 things. We do them together. We do them twice if we have to. By tonight, I want us to know, to the ounce and to the calorie, what we have in this house, how long it lasts, and what we are most likely to run out of first. Is that clear? Clear, Mom. Clear, Mommy. Mark, clear. Good. Jake, you're on water. I want every container in this house inventoried. Every jug, every bottle, every pitcher, every pot Dad filled yesterday, the 2 upstairs bathtubs, the sinks, the 5-gallon jugs in the basement. Total it up by gallons on this page. Then I want you to get one of the filter pumps out of the trauma kit, and I want you to clean the cloudy stuff out of the upstairs bathtub, 1 pitcher at a time, into the big camping jug. Slowly. Don't pull it off the bottom. Take it off the top. Light brown is fine. Rust brown is fine for flushing, but not for drinking. Understood. Understood. Em, you're on food. I need you to sit on the pantry floor with this pen and this piece of paper and count everything that is boxed, canned, bagged, or jarred. Not by brand, by category. Beans, rice, pasta, canned protein, canned vegetables, oats, peanut butter, jam, anything sealed, anything shelf stable. Write a number next to each category. Don't guess. Count it. Take all day if you have to. Can you do that? Yes, Mommy. Good. Mark. Yeah. You and I are on security, windows, doors, sight lines. We are going to walk this house together, every window on both floors and the basement, and we are going to figure out what the inside of this house looks like from outside at night. We are going to make sure that when the sun goes down, this house does not glow. Okay. And information. That's all of us. At noon, 1800 and 2200, we crank up the radio and we listen for 10 minutes. We log what we hear, everything. Station frequencies, times, whatever words we catch, we build a picture. We do not trust any single broadcast. We trust patterns. If 3 stations say the same thing, we give it weight. If one station says something, we write it down and we wait for confirmation. Are we clear? Clear, clear, clear. Good, go. They went. Jake took the pad and walked out of the kitchen. Emily took her own piece of paper and a pencil out of her sketch pad. Not a pen, because Emily did her counting in pencil and Sarah did not argue with her about it, and she walked to the pantry and sat down cross-legged on the pantry floor and started counting. Mark stood in the kitchen a moment with his wife, Sarah. Yeah, you've thought about this. I've thought about this a lot, Mark. For 2 years. Yeah. Why didn't you... I tried, Mark. Sarah, I tried. I bought tubs. I told you what was in them. I told you about the water jugs. I told you about the radio. Every single time I told you, you nodded at me the way a husband nods at a wife when she is saying a thing he has decided not to be interested in. And I got tired of telling you. And I stopped telling you. And I kept building it anyway, because I knew that if I stopped building it, we would be dead this morning. He did not answer. Mark. I know. I am not mad at you. You should be. I do not have the time to be mad at you today. Maybe next week. Today I need you standing next to me, doing what I say, because I am one nurse in a house in Canton, Georgia, and I cannot carry 4 people through this alone. I need you, Mark. I need the version of you I married, and I need you to find him fast. Okay. Okay. She started walking. They did the walk. They did the windows. Every window on the first floor. Sarah taped black contractor trash bags over the half-basement windows from the inside, 2 layers thick, with duct tape around every edge. She did the same with the little half-moon window in the front door, and with the side lights on either side of it. In the living room, she pulled every blind to within an inch of fully closed. Then she took masking tape and taped the inside edges of the blinds to the window frame so that the wind through a heat vent or the shift of a closing door could not make the blinds swing and betray a light behind them. In the kitchen, she did the same. In the bedrooms upstairs, she did the same. Mark did the doors. He checked every lock. He tested every deadbolt. He took a kitchen chair and wedged it under the knob of the back door the way he had seen people do in old movies. And he was not sure it did anything, but it made him feel better. And Sarah did not argue with him. He set a heavy skillet on the counter inside the back door so that anyone opening that door from outside would knock the skillet off with the swing and wake him up. By noon, they had turned their house into something that would look from the street like a house that had been abandoned the previous morning by a family that had packed up and fled to Tennessee, which was exactly what Sarah wanted it to look like. Sarah. Yeah? What are you doing? I'm making our house not look like a house. What do you mean? The families on this street that survived what's coming are not going to be the families that kept a light on. They are going to be the families that looked empty. We look empty, Mark. From the street from today forward, we look empty. Okay. Go crank the radio. It's almost noon. Segment 4. At 12:02, Mark cranked the radio for a full 2 minutes, and then he turned it on. Sarah sat at the kitchen table with her pen and her notebook and the radio at her elbow, and she worked the dial. The first thing she got was static, and the second thing she got was static, and the third thing she got was a fragment of a voice, the same tired man from the previous afternoon, who had been giving weather and casualty estimates on a shortwave frequency out of what Sarah had decided was probably central Tennessee. He was not giving weather anymore, he was giving a list. He was reading very slowly in a voice that had gone past exhaustion and out the other side. A list of metropolitan areas that had confirmed detonations, which was longer than it had been the day before. He got through Washington, Norfolk, San Diego, Colorado Springs, Offutt, Minot, Whiteman, Barksdale, Atlanta, Dobbins, Redstone, Oak Ridge, and Kings Bay. And then he said, in the same voice, additional confirmed strikes at this hour include New York City, Philadelphia, the Boston metropolitan area, Chicago, Detroit, Houston, Dallas, Los Angeles, the San Francisco Bay Area, Seattle, Portland, St. Louis, Kansas City, Miami, and the Tampa Bay area. We have unconfirmed reports from Memphis, Nashville, New Orleans, Phoenix, Denver, and Salt Lake City. Federal emergency response at this hour is not functional. Repeat, federal emergency response is not functional. State and local response is not coordinated. Citizens are advised. And then the static ate him again for a long time. And when he came back, he was reading a different thing. And his voice was not different, but something in the reading was different. And Sarah wrote in her notebook without looking up. the word that she would later cross out and replace with a better word, which was hopeless. The man said, "Power generation in the Eastern Interconnect has failed. Power generation in the Texas Interconnect has failed. Power generation in the Western Interconnect is intermittent and region dependent. The cellular network is down in 95% of the continental United States. The wired phone network is largely intact on legacy copper, but dependent on local switching that is without backup power. Emergency services in most metropolitan and suburban areas are without dispatch capability. Repeat, emergency services in most metropolitan and suburban areas are without dispatch capability. If you are injured or in need of medical care, your local resources are..." And then the static came back and the static stayed. Sarah wrote for about a minute in her notebook. When she was done writing, she set the pencil down. "Mark, yeah, there's no grid. I know. There's no coming back from this, Mark. There's no crew coming to restore power. There are no lineman trucks rolling out tomorrow. There is no 911. There are no ambulances. There are no hospitals, Mark. The hospital I worked at yesterday, the emergency department I worked at for 5 years, that building is full of people who are going to die in it over the next 72 hours because nobody's restocking it and nobody is running the ventilators and nobody is coming for them. Sarah, Mark, nobody is coming. I know. Nobody's coming, Mark. Not today, not next week, not ever." She said it quietly, the way you say a hard thing you have already accepted, which was different from the way you say a hard thing you have just realized. And Mark understood as she said it that his wife had understood this fully at some point in the last 24 hours and had kept the understanding to herself until it was useful. He sat across from her at the table. "Sarah, yeah. What do we do? What we're already doing, Mark. Exactly what we're already doing. We stay in this house, we stay quiet, we count what we have, we watch the street, we do not help people we cannot help. We do help people we can. We make it to next week, and then the week after that, and at some point in the next few weeks, when it is safe to go outside for longer than a mask can protect us for, we figure out what the rest of this century is going to look like, because the rest of this century is going to be completely different from the century we had yesterday. But that's not today." Mark nodded. And then from the front door came 3 sharp knocks. Not slow knocks, not the deliberate 3-space tempo of the voice from the night before. These were hard, fast, human knocks. The knocks of a woman knocking on a door with the heel of her hand because her knuckles were already tired. Casey was at the door before either of them were. He did not growl. He was not still. His tail was moving, low and uncertain, and he was looking at the door, and he was whining very softly, which was a thing Casey did only for people he knew. Sarah stood up. "Mark, yeah. That's Grace. How do you..." "That's Grace? Casey knows her. Come on." She went, he went. At the door, she did not throw it open. She stood to the side of it with the revolver in her hand, and she said through the door, "Grace?" "Sarah, oh my God, Sarah." "Grace, who is with you?" "Olivia. Just Olivia." "Sarah, please, please." "Grace, is there anyone behind you?" No, there's no one." "Sarah, please, the door." Sarah nodded at Mark. Mark unlocked the door. He opened it a foot. Grace Moon, 39 years old, small, normally blonde, and put together, was standing on the porch in yoga pants and a sweatshirt that had something on the front of it that Mark realized after 2 seconds was dried blood. She had her 11-year-old daughter, Olivia, by the hand. Olivia's face was gray, and her eyes were wide, and she was not crying, but she was holding her mother's hand with both of her hands, which was the way a child holds on to something that is trying to get away. Grace did not step through the door. She just stood there on the porch with her daughter, and she looked at Sarah through the gap of the half-open door, and she said, in a voice that was almost a whisper, "Sarah, David's gone. Justin's gone. The house. Please. Please." Sarah opened the door the rest of the way. She pulled them in. She slammed the door. Mark threw the deadbolt. And the second he did, from the floor behind him, Casey made a sound Mark had never heard from that dog in 4 years, which was a high, soft whine over Olivia's hair as she dropped to her knees on the foyer tile. Segment 5, Sarah got them to the couch in the living room. She sat Grace down and put a blanket around her shoulders, and she peeled the sweatshirt with the dried blood off over Grace's head, slowly, the way a nurse peels clothing off a patient, and she asked Grace quietly whose blood it was. "Not mine," Grace said. "Not Olivia's." "Whose?" Grace looked at Olivia. Olivia was sitting next to her mother on the couch with her knees pulled up to her chest. Casey, who had crossed the living room without being asked, was lying on the rug in front of the couch at Olivia's feet with his chin on his paws, amber eyes looking up at the girl. "Justin," Grace said. "Justin is hurt. Justin was hurt." "Grace, look at me. Where is Justin now?" "I don't know." Sarah was quiet for a long beat. "Grace, start at the beginning. Not the middle, the beginning. Yesterday morning. What happened at your house yesterday morning?" Grace took a breath and she let it out, and then she told them. David, 42, an electrical engineer, had been home on paternity-style leave after a minor surgery 3 weeks earlier and was not in downtown Atlanta when the warheads came in. He had been at the kitchen table when the EAS tones hit the phones. He had done the wrong thing. He had gone to the garage. He had told Grace to pack the minivan, fast, essentials only, because they were going to his brother's place in Cleveland, Tennessee, 2 hours north, up 75. Justin, home from Kennesaw State for the fall break week, had been in the basement lifting weights. He had come upstairs when the tones went off. Grace had started packing. David had gone back to the kitchen. They had all seen the flash to the south through the kitchen windows. At about the same time the Smiths had seen it, David, to his credit, had not frozen. David had moved. He had run the family out to the minivan in the garage with 2 bags and a cooler of water, and he had lifted the garage door by hand, and he had backed the minivan out into the driveway, and he had been at the end of the driveway, about to pull out, when the sky to the west had flashed, and when the second flash had gone through the glass of the minivan, they had all understood simultaneously that driving was not the thing they were going to do today. David had pulled back into the driveway. He had not closed the garage door. He had not closed the tailgate. They had run into the house. They had gone to the basement. They had spent the night the way the Smiths had spent the night, on the floor of a basement, with a battery lantern and a camping mattress, and the fear that the house above them was no longer a house. At some point in the night, David had gone upstairs. Grace did not know why. He had said he was going for water and to check the locks, and he had been gone for too long, and Justin had gone up to find him. And Justin had come back down with blood on his shirt and on his hands, and with a face Grace had not seen on her son before in 19 years. And Justin had said one thing, which was, "Mom, stay down here with Olivia." And he had gone back up. Grace had stayed. She had stayed for, she thought, maybe an hour. Then there had been a sound upstairs that was not a normal sound, which was a thing she was not willing to describe. And then there had been silence. And then the silence had gone on for another long stretch of time, and then she had heard the front door open and close, and she had waited, and she had heard footsteps on the porch, going away from the house, 2 sets, and then she had heard nothing for several hours. She had made Olivia stay in the basement. At dawn she had gone upstairs. She had found blood in the kitchen and blood in the hallway, and the front door standing open, and no one in the house. No David. No Justin, no body, blood on the floor, blood on the wall of the kitchen, 2 sets of footprints going out the front door, in the blood, the way footprints look when you step in wet paint and walk through a garage. One set of prints was David's shoes. She knew David's shoes. She had bought them for him for Christmas. The other set was something she did not recognize. She and Olivia had taken what they could carry out of the basement. They had come across the grass. They had come to the Smiths' door because the Smiths were the only other family on this street Grace would trust with her daughter. Sarah sat on the coffee table across from Grace through the whole telling, and she did not say anything the entire time Grace was talking. And when Grace finished, Sarah did not offer her any reassurances because there were no reassurances to offer, and Grace did not want them and would not have believed them. Sarah said finally, "Grace, I'm going to ask you something now that is going to sound cold. I need you to answer me truthfully." "Okay. The sound you heard upstairs, that you are not willing to describe, did it sound like a struggle or did it sound like something else?"
Something else.
"Grace." "Sarah, I can't." "Grace, it matters. Did it sound like a struggle or did it sound like something else?"
Grace was quiet a long time.
"It sounded like two people laughing," she said, "but it wasn't two people laughing." Sarah did not answer that. Mark, standing behind the couch with his arms crossed over his chest, closed his eyes. The knock on the front door came 10 minutes later. It was a sharp young knock, 2 hard raps. Casey was at the door before anyone could move. This time he was not whining. He was not growling. He was alert, and he was still, and the hair on his shoulders was not up. He was listening. A voice came through the door.
It was a young man's voice. It was shaking.
"Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, it's Justin. Justin Moon from next door. Please, is my mom and Olivia with you?"
Mark looked at Sarah. Sarah did not move.
"Sarah, Mark, through the door, eyes only. You do not open it without me seeing him."
Mark went to the door. He looked through the peephole.
It was Justin. He was alone. He had a jacket on that was the wrong jacket for the weather. He had a smear of something dark under his jaw. He had a duffel bag at his feet. "Sarah, it's him. He's alone. He's hurt." "Alone how? Define alone. Is he looking behind him?"
He is looking behind him.
"Mark, open the door 3 inches, not more." Mark opened the door 3 inches. Justin saw his mother through the gap, and he did not break down. And Mark did not open the door any wider. And Sarah came up behind him and looked through the gap for a long 5 seconds. And then she said quietly, "Justin, come in. Slow. Leave the bag. Drop the jacket in the yard before you come up the porch."
He did. He came in. Mark closed the door. Sarah threw the deadbolt. Grace stood up from the couch and did not say anything. And her son crossed the living room and put his forehead on his mother's shoulder, and he held on to her. And Sarah stood to the side, and she did not make any sound at all. Segment 6. Sarah had Justin on a kitchen chair with his shirt off inside of 10 minutes. The cut under his jaw was shallower than it looked. The blood on his shirt was mostly not his. There was a bruise across his left shoulder blade that was the shape of a door frame. There was a scrape on his right forearm that had gravel in it. Sarah cleaned the jaw cut with saline and closed it with a pair of butterfly strips out of her trauma kit, and she did not ask him what had happened until she had the strips in place, and a clean shirt pulled down over his head. Then she pulled up a chair across from him and she said, "Justin, we need to know what happened." Justin looked at his mother. Grace was sitting on the couch with her arms around Olivia, and she did not look back at him, and that was an answer by itself. "Dad went upstairs," Justin said. "I know. Your mother told us. Dad went upstairs, and he didn't come back, so I went up." "Go on." There was a man in the kitchen. "Did you know him?"
"No, he was older. He was maybe 50. He was wet, like he had been out in the rain. But it wasn't raining. He was wet, and he was sitting at our kitchen table, drinking water out of our glass."
Sarah did not move.
"Dad was on the floor. He was Mrs. Smith. Dad was alive. He was alive when I got up there. He was alive. He tried to say something to me. He couldn't. He looked at me. I got down on the floor next to him, and the man at the table didn't even look up, Mrs. Smith. He didn't even look up. He just drank the water, and then he set the glass down, and then he looked at me over the rim of the glass, like he had noticed I was there for the first time. And then he smiled, and then he got up, and then he walked out the front door."
"Just walked out."
"Just walked out, Mrs. Smith, like he was done with us, with dinner, with whatever he was doing." "What did you do?" "I held Dad's hand." "For how long?" Until he stopped. Then I got up. I couldn't carry him down to the basement. I couldn't tell Mom. I put a towel over his face. I went out the front door. I was going to come over here, and I saw the man, the one from the kitchen. He was on our porch, just standing, not moving, looking back at the house. I went back inside. I ran to the back door. I went out the back. I went across the Dunbar's yard and through their fence and into the woods behind their place, and I ran. I ran to the target, Mrs. Smith. I was going to see if there was I don't know. I wasn't thinking. The target was on fire. Sarah sat very still. Justin, the man who was in your kitchen, can you describe him? He was older, maybe 50, maybe 55. He was wearing a suit, a wetsuit. I mean a business suit, wet. His hair was wet. He was Mrs. Smith. He wasn't right. Define not right. His face. It wasn't like he was on something. It was like he wasn't all the way there. Like parts of him were somewhere else. I don't know how to say it. Sarah nodded. Justin, think carefully. When he was drinking the water, did he swallow it? Justin paused. I think so. I don't know. He was drinking it. Did you see him swallow? I don't know, Mrs. Smith. Okay. Mrs. Smith, what are you asking me? Sarah did not answer. She stood up. Justin, you did what you could for your father. You did what you had to for your mother and your sister. You are with us now. You are going to stay with us. We will talk about the rest of it tonight. Mrs. Smith? Later, Justin, later. She went into the kitchen. Mark followed her. In the kitchen, out of earshot of Grace and the children, Sarah leaned both hands on the counter and put her head down for about 10 seconds. And when she came up, her face was the face she had worn in the basement the day before, when she had talked about her mother, the nurse's face, the working face. Mark, yeah, that wasn't a looter. I know. The man in the suit, the one on Jeffers yesterday with the phone, the thing at our door last night, these are not the same people, and they are not doing the same things, and they are also not normal people, Mark. I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't know if it's something in the air or something in their heads or something the combined effect of a dozen payloads is doing to whatever percent of a population. I don't know. But something is wrong with some of the people who are still walking around out there, and we are going to see more of them. And we are not going to open the door for any of them. Okay. Mark, I need you to hear me. Not most of them. A few of them. The rest of the people out there are just scared and desperate and grieving and trying to figure out how to get through today. And we are going to have to turn most of those people away too, because we cannot help them. And helping them once is the same as making ourselves a target. Do you understand? Yeah. Good. Not 10 minutes later, there were knuckles on the front door. Not Grace's hand, not Justin's, a man's knuckles. 3 sharp raps. Mark was at the door. He looked through the peephole. It was a man he half recognized from the far end of the street. Hal, late 50s, a gas can in his hand. He was alone. Sarah, I see him. He's got a gas can. I see him, Mark. Hal knocked again. Mr. Smith? Hey, Mr. Smith, I know you're home. I can see that. I know you're home. Hey, my wife is diabetic. Her insulin is going to spoil in about 12 hours because there's no power. My generator is out. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm just asking for about a gallon, just a gallon, to run the generator for a few hours, just enough to get the insulin through tonight. Please. Mark looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at Mark. She shook her head, once, short. Mark opened the door 3 inches. Hal, Mr. Smith, please. Hal, I don't have any gas to spare. Mr. Smith, Hal, I have a family in here. I have neighbors who came over this morning with less than the clothes on their back. I don't have a gallon of gas to spare. I'm sorry. Hal's face did a thing. Mr. Smith, my wife is going to die. Mark closed his eyes for a second. Hal, I know. Mr. Smith, Hal, there's a bottle of water on the porch. Take it and please go home. He stood there with his forehead against the door, and he did not move for a long time. And when he finally turned around, Sarah was behind him, and she put her hand on his back, and she did not say anything. Segment 7. The afternoon gave way to the evening in a way it never had before in any October of Mark's life. The sun dropped behind the trees to the west the way it always did, but there was no hum of streetlights coming up, no kitchen lights in the Lindgren's windows 2 doors down, No flicker of a television in any living room on the street. The darkness gathered in the way darkness must have gathered over this same piece of Georgia 200 years ago, before electricity, before radio, before any reason to expect light after sunset that did not come from a fire or a lantern or the moon. Jake did his water inventory and reported it back to his mother on a piece of notebook paper in block letters in his own handwriting. He had totaled 47 gallons of drinkable water in the house, if they were careful with the filtering, and another 60 gallons of what he called secondary water, which was the bathtubs and the unfiltered sink fills, which could be used for flushing toilets and washing hands. Sarah looked at the total and did the math in her head and told him it was 9 days for the 7 of them at minimum intake, maybe 11 if they tightened it down. Jake wrote that on the bottom of the page and underlined it. Emily did her food inventory and presented it to her mother in pencil on a page torn out of her sketch pad. The categories were in her neat 7th grade handwriting. Beans, 14 cans. Rice, 11 pounds dry. Pasta, 6 pounds dry. Canned protein, 19 cans tuna, 12 cans chicken, 8 cans Spam. Canned vegetables, 23 cans. Oats, 9 pounds. Peanut butter, 4 jars. Jam, 3 jars. Honey, 1 jar. Sarah looked at the list and did the math in her head for the second time that day and told her daughter that the food situation was better than the water situation, which meant they had a water problem. Emily nodded. Sarah set up the moons in the den. She put Grace on the pullout. She put Justin on the love seat. She put Olivia on a pile of blankets on the floor in Emily's room because Emily had asked her if Olivia could sleep in her room, and Sarah had said yes, because that was the right answer. And Emily and Olivia had gone upstairs together and closed the door, and the house had settled a little around the 2 11 and 12-year-old girls sitting on the bedroom floor in the dusk. Not talking yet, just sitting. Around 7, the house was as dark as the outside. Sarah lit one camping lantern in the kitchen and one in the living room, and she had both of them turned down to the lowest setting. The light they threw was the color of weak tea, and it did not travel far. They ate around the kitchen table, 7 people and a dog. Sarah served beans and rice with a can of tuna stirred through it, out of the same bowl for each of them, the way a nurse serves portions in a triage kitchen. Nobody had seconds. Nobody asked for seconds. The Moon children and the Smith children ate without speaking. Jake, next to Justin, reached across at one point and put his hand on his friend's back for a second and took it off, which was the closest thing to a eulogy any of them said all evening. After dinner, Sarah pulled Grace into the kitchen and asked her quietly what medication she was on, what medications Olivia and Justin were on, what medications David had been on. Grace listed them out. Sarah wrote it down in her notebook without commenting. She wrote down that Grace was on a thyroid medication and a low-dose antidepressant. She wrote down that Olivia was on nothing. She wrote down that Justin was on nothing. She wrote down that David had been on a blood pressure medication, which was now academic. She put the notebook in the drawer with her trauma kit. Around 8, Mark was in the living room with the shotgun across his knees in the dark, and Sarah came and sat next to him on the couch, and for a long time neither of them spoke. Mark. Yeah. Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Are you all right? He looked at her. No.
I didn't think so. Sarah, I turned Hal away.
I know.
Sarah, his wife is going to die.
I know. Sarah.
Mark, listen to me. His wife was going to die when the power went out. Hal's generator was not going to run forever. He has maybe 3 cans of fuel in his garage. Even if we gave him every drop of gas in our garage, he runs out in 10 days. What was he going to do on day 11? What was he going to do on day 15? His wife has been dying since yesterday morning. You and I cannot put that off. We can make ourselves poor by a gallon of gas, and we can feel better about ourselves tonight. And we can lose a week of cooking fuel, and Hal's wife still dies next week. That is the math.
I know. Do you?
Yeah. Then let me say one more thing. Hal's wife is in God's hands, Mark. She is not in our hands. She has not been in our hands since yesterday morning. I am going to pray for her tonight. I am going to pray for Hal tonight. I am going to pray for Mrs. Henderson's dog. I am going to pray for David Moon. And I am going to pray for us. That is the part I can do.
The rest of it is not mine, and it is not yours, and it never was." He looked at her in the dim lantern light. "Sarah." "Yeah." "I want to pray with you tonight." She did not answer at first. "Sarah, I don't know how, not the way you do, not really, but if you will, I would like to. Tonight, with you." She reached over and took his hand. She did not squeeze. She just took it. "Yes, Mark. Of course." They did. Later. In the dark kitchen, with the children asleep on the floor upstairs, and the Moons asleep in the den, and Casey lying between the living room and the foyer with his chin on his paws and his amber eyes half open. Sarah prayed out loud, quietly, the way she had been praying in the mornings for 15 years, and Mark sat across the table from her with his hands folded, and he did not pray out loud, but he said at one point softly, "Amen." It was not much. It was a start. Outrow. At 3:15 in the morning, Casey came off the rug in the foyer without a sound and stood up. Mark was on the couch with the shotgun across his knees. He had not been asleep, not really, but his eyes had closed, and they came open the second Casey stood, because the absence of the dog's breathing from the rug registered in Mark's body before his mind knew what it was registering. Casey was looking at the front door. His tail was down. His ears were forward. There was no growl in his chest yet. He was listening. Mark sat up slowly. He did not stand. He set his feet flat on the floor. He reached down beside the couch for the flashlight Sarah had left there. He did not turn it on. The house around him was quiet. Sarah was asleep on the other couch, the little revolver on the cushion under her right hand. The Moons were asleep in the den. Jake was upstairs on the hallway floor outside the girls' bedrooms, where he had installed himself without asking, with a sleeping bag and a baseball bat. Emily and Olivia were in Emily's room with the door closed. Casey took one slow step toward the front door. Mark stood. He moved to the front window on bare feet, and he pulled the curtain back half an inch with one knuckle. The street was dark. The moon was behind clouds. The shapes of the houses on Jeffers Drive were black, against a slightly less black sky. There were people on the street, not one, not two, a group, maybe 5, maybe 6. They were moving down the center of Jeffers Drive, from the direction of the Moon's house toward the cul-de-sac. They were not walking, they were not running. They were somewhere between, a slow lope, the way a pack moves when it is not in a hurry, and also not wasting time. They were spread across the width of the road, not bunched. There was no talking among them. Mark could not see their faces. They were too far and too dark. They walked past the Smiths' driveway. One of them stopped. The one who stopped was near the back of the group. He stopped in the middle of the street at the mouth of the Smiths' driveway, and he turned his head slowly, and he looked at the house. Mark did not breathe. The figure at the end of the driveway did not move for 10 long seconds. Then he lifted one hand almost casually and pointed at the house, not at a window, at the house itself. He held his hand up for 3 or 4 seconds, pointing, and then he dropped his hand, and he turned and he kept walking with the group. And the group continued down Jeffers Drive and around the bend and out of sight behind the hedge at the corner. Mark stood at the window with the curtain in his hand and did not move. Casey was behind him at the door. The low thing in his chest was there now, not loud, a steady rumble. Sarah was awake. She had not made a sound. She was beside him at the window. She had the revolver in her hand, and she was looking over his shoulder at the street. Mark. I saw it. Mark, did he... He pointed at the house. At which window? Not a window, Sarah. At the house. She was quiet. Sarah, they were walking in a group. I saw 6 of them, maybe more, moving down the street together. I saw, Mark. They came from the Moon's end of the street. I know. Sarah, if they are grouping up... Mark, listen to me. We do not know who that was. We do not know if they have the house. We do not know what the pointing meant. We do not know if they are coming back. All we know right now is that we are awake, and the doors are locked, and the windows are covered, and there are 7 of us in this house and a dog, and we are going to stay in this house with the doors locked for the rest of the night. Sarah, Mark, tonight nobody comes in. Nobody comes in. And in the morning, you and Jake and Justin and I are going to sit at this table and we are going to figure out what we do tomorrow that we did not have to do today. Yeah. She put her hand on the back of his neck for a second and she left it there, and then she took it off. Casey stayed at the door. Neither of them slept again. When the sky started to come up gray in the east, the copper line to the south was a little less copper than it had been the previous morning, but it was still there. The moon's front door, 2 doors down, was still standing open. The silver Honda in the middle of Jeffers Drive was still there. The wind was still out of the west, and somewhere down the street, in the direction the group had gone, a single column of smoke was rising, thin and steady, from a house whose address Mark did not yet want to know.
This is not over.